Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are on Saturday, January 4th. We're going to take a look at Archer Aviation today. So ACHR had another big day on Friday, up over 20%, and I wanted to come in and take a look. I did clean the chart up a little bit, got rid of a bunch of these levels that we had down here. If it gets back down there and folks are still interested, we can come take another look and fill in some of those levels again, but it was just crowding the chart and just seemed unnecessary. So I figured covering 838 up to, I believe, 1414 is actually the upper level I have here, is plenty for now. So just so that we can sort of not make this a super nauseating video, let's get these high levels out of the way, these upper levels out of the way, and then we'll scroll to the current price action and go from there. So if it does continue to push, I have this 1182 as the nearest in resistance level. If it can get through that, I have 1268, 1337, and 1414. I have thin price action to go off of over here, so I'm doing the best that I can. We'll see how that holds up, or if it makes sense, maybe we'll put in a Fibonacci extension level if that actually seems to sort of bear out better fruit. But I figured while we have some price action that isn't horrific, it's just very thin, we might as well use what we have and sort of see how that holds up. So that's sort of where that's coming from. Now, if it does pull back, we have near-in support, 1116. So it's not very far, give it plenty of opportunity to catch that if it wants to. And then even 1040, it's spent some time moving through there down to 943 and has seemed to be willing to pick up buyers in that range and push it through that 1040 as well, and even through that 1116. So it'd be interesting to see if buyers continue to show up in that range. Let's see how this looks. Okay, now based on the Webull information, so this all depends on it being accurate, but as of close yesterday on Friday, they're showing total profited shares proportion of 99.81, so enormous. So the question is going to be, are folks going to continue to let winners ride, or are they going to lock in profit? And if they do, to what degree are they going to lock in profit, right? Is it going to be something that's going to throw a monkey wrench into the bullish momentum, or are new buyers going to continue to come in and, push it higher and sort of new buyers outpace the sellers locking in profit? You do see, though, the last 4 trading days, December 30th, 31st, and then we had the break, and then January 2nd and 3rd, decent amount of large-scale orders coming out. So those folks wanting to lock in profit, and you definitely see it, playing a role, down 10%, down 3%, and then down just a little under 2%. So really just took a big hit on that 10% day. But then buyers started to come in and sort of offset those large-scale orders with some buys as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out and what that means for folks, what they want to do with it. Now, aside from the levels, we have interesting play here on the EMA side of things. So we have it interacting right now off of the 8 EMA, that white one. If that doesn't start to dip, meaning if it doesn't just like put in a nice day on Friday and then immediately come down and start interlocking with the 21 EMA or the 34 for sure, but even the 21, if it continues to ride off of this 8, what that would typically say to me is that there is more bullish momentum to be exhausted before this run is going to take more of a breather. And by breather, I don't mean it's going to plummet. I don't mean it's going to just completely take the elevator down. It could, but all that I mean is, a longer period of consolidation or a little bit more of a pullback, maybe like you saw here, right? Something like that. But yeah, that's what it would typically say to me, is riding the 8 here on this little pullback and seeming, for the moment, we're just one candle in of being able to hold the EMA, the 8 EMA. But if that continues to be the case, then yeah, that would typically be what that says to me is there may be more bullish momentum to be exhausted here. So keep a close eye on those EMAs for sure and see how that ride plays out. Now we did have a brief trigger and fire here in the TTM squeeze indicator. That brought a little bit of this pullback and then this shoot back up. So are we getting like a roller coaster move off of the TTM squeeze indicator, which isn't that uncommon, versus here where we got actually a much cleaner, much nicer move, lengthy trigger, and then when it fired, that took it from $3 up to 11. So really good call out there by the TTM squeeze indicator, but then it does have these periods where it can get just sort of like trigger, fire, and then it just starts to roller coaster, and then it makes does it make its move ultimately large portion to the upside, large portion to the downside? We'll have to see. But call trigger for January as it currently stands at 10.23 with a +1 ATR, giving it a move to 11.77. So if we see that full stretch, then we're sort of almost there from the price action on Friday. But it could certainly put in motion above the +1 ATR. You see that back here, right? You see a huge move above it. This topped out at about 450 or so, and in that month it moved up like double that. So it could certainly stretch well beyond that, but that would at least be the first sort of check boxes that you'd look for. If it slips below the put trigger, that's currently situated at 9.27 and has a -1 down to 7.73. So same thing sort of stands true to the downside, right? It can, as quickly as they can move up, they can move down, and often they can move down much faster than they can move up. Not always, but just keep that in mind, that these volatile stocks get pretty tricky for folks because they don't want the party to end. But yeah, just be aware. You could wake up and all of a sudden in some pre-market it could be down 43% or something like that, and by then it's sort of too late, right? You're sort of in there. But we'll see what happens. We have these levels charted. The EMAs are looking good at the moment, but you don't know when sentiment is going to shift, and you don't know what catalysts may or may not be coming down the road that will put an impact in this. And also sometimes when there is sort of a macro trend adjustment, right? So if the overall market pulls back a bit, we have certainly seen plenty of examples in the past of stocks that had a recent rocket ship run, which we have to count this as that, right? This was 282 in September, and then over the course of just over 3 months, it's hitting over 11, right? So rocket ship run for sure. And when we get a macro pullback, we have oftentimes seen that situation result in these stocks taking the biggest beating of all, right? So if the S&P comes down 10%, 12% over a period of time, 15%, some of these stocks get huge double-digit percentage losses. So just keep that in mind. It's part of the reality of the stock world, and sometimes you can't avoid it, right? Like I said, if something happens and we wake up and pre-market on Monday, the puppy is down significantly, it's just what happens sometimes. You've got to lick your wounds, figure out if you're going to stay in it, make a plan B, and kind of go from there. But just thought I'd mention that as folks get sort of really exuberant, sometimes they forget that what the changing winds can sometimes look like. So not to throw cold water on anyone's party. That's certainly not a saying, but you know what I mean. But just as a cautionary tale, or as maybe being too fatherly, makes me want to at least point that out to folks. All right, enough rambling. I hope that you have a good weekend and that your trading week gets off to a good start on Monday. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.